Hey, you look like you could use some good news. Well, I've got three good news stories that have to do with military and veterans fighting back against this Trump administration. My name is Christopher Goldsmith. I'm a former United States Army sergeant, and I'm the founder of Task Force Butler Institute and Veterans Fighting Fascism. We are organizations that perform research into domestic extremist organizations and individuals, find criminality, and then take that evidence and hold these people accountable in a court of law. But we also partner with other veterans organizations. One of those partners is Common Defense. So here's your first good news story. Common Defense sued the Trump administration to stop the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, from basically just indiscriminately firing people throughout the federal government. As you may know, about 1/3 of all federal employees have served in uniform, have served in the military. So Common Defense, as an organization that represents veterans, has standing. Many of Common Defense's members have been among those who were purged from the federal government. Not for any good reason, just because billionaires Elon Musk and Donald Trump are trying to reduce their tax burden. So the judge in that case called out OPM and said, no, you do not have the authority to just tell all the federal agencies to start firing people at random. So that judge issued a temporary restraining order. And the judge ordered the OPM to contact every one of the departments and let them know that they should tell all of their employees and now former employees that the OPM did not have the authority to send out a memo saying that people needed to be fired. So if you want to learn more about this case and join the fight, go to commondefense.us. Here's good story number 2. I joined with other veterans and a bunch of unions sue to get OPM and the Department of Education and the Department of Treasury free of Musk and his doggy boys. Now, we are suing on the basis of the Privacy Act. The Privacy Act was passed after Watergate to make it so it would be more difficult for an authoritarian leader to basically collect information on individual Americans from each of the departments and compile enemies lists. We, as veterans who all served in the federal government, we were federal employees when we served in uniform, all of our employment records are at OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. And I, as a former student veteran who used VA benefits to go to school, I also took out loans. So things like my social security number, my bank account and routing information, my employment history, all of my personal connections that needed to be interviewed so that I could get a secret security clearance when I was in the Army. All of this personal data combined with things like my phone number and address and email, all of that private information, the doggy boys and Elon Musk unlawfully gained access to. So other plaintiffs in another lawsuit had already gotten doggy out of Treasury. So the judge in our case also booted them out of the Department of Education and OPM. That came in the form of a temporary restraining order that is still going on today and will hopefully, after a hearing, be turned into a preliminary injunction. Now, if the Trump administration continues to fight this, there is a chance that we will have a trial. And in the lead up to the trial, there will be discovery, which could involve interviewing witnesses. And personally, I would love it if a federal judge ordered Elon Musk and the doggy boys to testify under oath. But I want to be clear in saying that I do not know that that will happen. And I imagine that the White House would try to assert some sort of executive privilege. So that is 2 lawsuits led by veterans and veterans organizations that have been successful in holding back the Trump-Musk administration from their overreach. And here's your third good story for today. VA Secretary Doug Collins came out really excited on social media and talked about how he had canceled hundreds of contracts with the doggy boys. And he announced, so proud of himself, that nearly $1 billion in contracts would be canceled. And he came onto social media and did a goofy video about how he was canceling contracts that had to do with helping people create PowerPoint presentations. And he canceled contracts that had to do with leadership development. But what he didn't say in those goofy videos is that he canceled dozens of contracts that had to do with helping prevent veteran suicide and things like helping homeless veterans. Because the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is a piece of shit, and he probably didn't even read about the contracts that he canceled. Sorry, I couldn't hold myself back on that one. Now, Secretary Collins wanted us to just take his word for it, but thankfully, journalists at places like the Military Times, military.com, the AP, they were able to figure out what some of these contracts were and let the public know. And by law, the VA is supposed to give preference to veteran-owned businesses in contracting. So it was pretty quickly figured out that Mr. Doug Collins, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, fucked over a bunch of veteran small business owners. Veterans who went into the private sector, which is what they're saying they're trying to encourage, and wanted to do so by helping their fellow veterans. And then Secretary Doug Collins, Elon Musk, and Trump came in and kicked those veterans to the curb and said, I don't care if you're trying to help prevent veteran suicide or homelessness among veterans. Fuck you for your service. I heard that's the Trump-Musk administration's new slogan. Fuck you for your service to veterans, fuck you for your service to federal employees, and fuck you for your service for all of the allies around the world who've been risking their lives to keep Americans safe. So look, the moral of the story is that going on offense against fascism works. Whether it's lawsuits or just public outrage, these things matter, and they can stop the abuses of the Trump administration. So don't let the bastards get you down. Yes, it feels like the world's on fire, but there's a lot of us working to put those fires out. If you want to learn more about these stories and other news stories about fighting fascism and how veterans are involved in this, you can check out my Substack, onoffense.substack.com. Look for On Offense with Chris Goldsmith. Sign up and you'll be the first to know about these kinds of things.